She was an English teacher in Tokyo, and then she vanished. What police found on a balcony stunned the entire country. March 26, 2007, a quiet street outside Tokyo. Police arrive at an apartment in Ichikawa after a young woman stopped showing up to work. It's a wellness check, a formality, but when officers look out onto the third-floor balcony, they see something strange, an old bathtub, partially concealed beneath a blue tarp, surrounded by planters, covered in vines, and underneath it all, something they can't immediately explain. The woman they were looking for had only been in Japan for 5 months. She was 22, a teacher. Her name was Lindsay Hawker, and this is her story. Before the headlines, before the press conferences, before the international attention, she was simply Lindsay. Lindsay Ann Hawker was born December 30th, 1984, in Coventry, England, the second of 3 daughters in a close-knit family. She was cheerful, driven, and thoughtful, always helping others before herself. She loved nature, studied biology, dreamed of travel. She attended the University of Leeds, where she excelled in the sciences, but felt drawn to teaching. She had a quiet leadership about her. People listened when she spoke, and after graduation, she began looking abroad. That's when she discovered Nova, a private English conversation school in Japan. They hired young native speakers and placed them in classrooms across the country. Lindsay applied, got the job, and in October 2006, she said goodbye to her family and flew to Tokyo. It was supposed to be the start of a dream. Lindsay was assigned to Koiwa, a quiet neighborhood in Tokyo's Edogawa ward. It was suburban, peaceful, the kind of place where nothing bad ever seems to happen. Her apartment was small but functional. She had a rice cooker, a space heater, a balcony that looked out over the rooftops. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. She quickly adjusted to Japanese life, riding the train, learning the customs, and developing friendships with coworkers. At Nova, she taught students of all ages. Kids, homemakers, businessmen, all eager to practice English. She shared stories through email, recorded short videos. Her smile never faded. By all accounts, Lindsay was thriving. She was exploring temples, trying new food, even dating someone new. She had taken a leap and landed on her feet, but behind the scenes, something else was watching her, something that didn't belong in her story. March 20th, 2007, Lindsay finishes teaching a class and exits the school. Waiting outside is a man. He's holding a notebook. He looks nervous, but friendly. He asks if she's an English teacher. She says yes. He asks if she tutors privately. She declines. He insists, offers to pay. Eventually, she agrees to meet him at a coffee shop the next day to talk. She texts her boyfriend afterward, says the guy was a little strange, but harmless. That man was Tatsuya Ichihashi. He was 28. He said he wanted to learn. He said he was interested in self-improvement. At the coffee shop, he brings a sketchbook. He shows Lindsay a portrait he's drawn. Of her, she's polite, uncomfortable, but composed. She says she'll consider the lessons. That moment in public felt safe, but safety is a feeling, and sometimes it's a false one. Tatsuya Ichihashi was born January 5, 1979 in Gifu Prefecture. His family was successful, his father a doctor, his mother a dentist, but Ichihashi didn't follow their path. He dropped out of university, drifted between part-time jobs. He isolated himself, socially and emotionally. He was obsessed with physical training, spent hours at the gym, kept notebooks of workout routines, rarely spoke to neighbors. But beneath the silence were warning signs, past accusations, stalking reports, complaints from women who said he followed them. No charges ever stuck. He was never prosecuted, but the pattern was forming. By the time he met Lindsay, he had no job, no structure, and plenty of time to observe. March 25th, 2007. It's a Sunday afternoon in Tokyo. Lindsay has plans. She's supposed to meet someone for a private English lesson, just one session. She tells her boyfriend, she texts a friend, she even gives the name, Tatsuya Ichihashi. It's not unusual for teachers in Japan to take on extra lessons for a bit of side income. Lindsay was careful, responsible. She made sure people knew where she was going. That afternoon, she heads to Ichihashi's apartment in Ichikawa. It's about 30 minutes outside central Tokyo. The building is plain, with small balconies and white tile siding. Security footage confirms Lindsay entered the building. She never came out. At first, no one is concerned. She may have just stayed longer, maybe went out after, but when she doesn't show up to work the next day, alarm bells start ringing. March 26th, Lindsay is a no-show for her shift at Nova. That's not like her. She was never late, never missed class. Her coworkers try to reach her, no answer. By afternoon, they contact police. Her boyfriend tells officers about the man from the coffee shop, about the lesson, about the name, Ichihashi. Police trace the address. Later that evening, they arrive at the apartment in Ichikawa. They knock. The man who answers fits the description. It's him. But before officers can even speak, he runs down the back stairwell, barefoot, vanishing into the city streets before anyone can react. When police re-enter the apartment, it's quiet, clean, but something feels off. Lindsay's shoes are at the door, her belongings neatly arranged inside. On the balcony, covered in vines and blue tarp, sits the tub. What they find next changes everything. The apartment is still. There are no signs of struggle, no mess, but something is deeply wrong. Lindsay's shoes are still by the door. Her backpack is inside. Nothing has been taken. Nothing appears forced. Police begin searching room by room, and then they step onto the balcony. The tub sits under a tangled curtain of vines, covered with soil, wrapped in a thick, faded tarp. It's heavy, cold. The officers begin peeling back the layers. Beneath the dirt and plastic ant, they make a discovery, and suddenly, this is no longer a missing persons case. The area is sealed, investigators are called in, and just like that, Lindsay's name becomes national news. Over the next few hours, media vans arrive, neighbors peek through curtains, but no one really understands yet what's happened inside apartment 302. The news spreads quickly. A young British woman has gone missing in Japan, and what police find at the scene suggests something serious. Within 24 hours, the name Lindsay Hawker is on every screen. In Tokyo, in Coventry, in headlines, worldwide. Her parents, Julia and Bill, are contacted by authorities. They board the first flight to Japan. When they land, everything changes. They are met by embassy staff, police, media, and a weight no parent should ever feel. Lindsay's death is not officially confirmed yet, at least not publicly, but behind closed doors, her family is given the truth. The investigation shifts into high gear. Search teams begin canvassing the neighborhood, but the man at the center of the case has already disappeared. Police identify the man Lindsay had agreed to meet, Tatsuya Ichihashi. They trace his last known address. They arrive, they knock, and he answers the door. But in the few seconds it takes officers to lower their guard, he runs, barefoot down the stairs, through an alley, gone. 9 officers chase him through side streets, but Ichihashi vanishes, and by nightfall, he's already miles away. Now, the investigation enters a new phase, one that no one expected. This is no longer a local tragedy, it's a nationwide manhunt. Ichihashi's face is printed on flyers, his name broadcast on every news channel in Japan. But as days become weeks and weeks become months, there are no leads, no sightings, only silence. The man who had drawn a portrait in a coffee shop had now drawn a target on his back. March 26, 2007. Officers stand outside the Ichikawa apartment, stunned. Their suspect gone. Moments ago, he had opened the door, calm, quiet, cooperative. But the second their focus slipped, he turned and ran down the narrow stairwell, barefoot, no wallet, no bag, just gone. It happened so fast, they didn't even see which way he turned. By the time backup arrived, there were only questions. How had they let him slip away? Why wasn't he cuffed? And where could he possibly go? Tatsuya Ichihashi had just escaped a murder investigation, and now Japan's most wanted man was on the run. The escape shocked everyone: police, the public, and especially Lindsay's family. He was right there, and now he wasn't. The following morning, press conferences began. Police apologized, said they didn't expect him to flee, that they wanted to question him gently, but that window was now closed. By April 1st, Ichihashi's face was everywhere. Flyers posted in subway stations, announcements broadcast in malls, his photo printed in every major newspaper in Japan. He was described as slim, around 5 feet 9 inches, soft-spoken, intelligent, a bit of a loner. He had a faint scar on his chin and a habit of jogging late at night. But despite the attention, there were no solid leads. The city was simply too big, and Ichihashi knew how to blend in. What no one knew was that Ichihashi had been preparing for this moment. Not the escape itself, but the idea of disappearing. He had no smartphone, no credit cards, no social media, and no real ties. For the first few days, he lived in internet cafes, places where people could sleep, shower, and vanish into anonymity. Later, he found labor jobs, construction, night shifts, shipping docks. He worked under fake names, kept his head down, took cash. He stopped talking to his parents, stopped calling anyone. Even police surveillance on the family revealed nothing. For the rest of 2007, he was simply gone. By mid-2007, Japan was looking everywhere for Tatsuya Ichihashi. His photo was plastered across newsstands, train stations, websites, but Ichihashi had erased himself. He avoided cameras, used coin laundromats, slept in net cafes or construction sites. He shaved his head, grew facial hair, changed his posture, and most chillingly, he began experimenting with his face. Not with makeup, not with prosthetics, but with crude methods of reshaping his appearance entirely on his own. He reportedly used household tools to attempt to reduce the width of his jaw, pressed weights against his chin, cut off moles with scissors and disinfectant. He stopped being the man in the wanted poster, at least visually, and to the public, he became invisible. By 2008, Ichihashi escalated his efforts to disappear. He began visiting cosmetic surgery clinics in major cities under false names. He was quiet, polite, paid in cash, and always asked for subtle changes. Nothing too dramatic. Double eyelid surgery, rhinoplasty, chin reshaping. Doctors later described him as strangely calm and unusually specific about his requests. He brought diagrams, spoke clinically, never once mentioned why he was there. Each procedure helped him drift further from his original appearance. He began wearing hats and masks in public, worked on shrimp boats, construction crews, and in shipping yards, always under aliases. He read constantly, avoided technology, and stayed mobile, never in one place more than a few weeks. It wasn't just hiding, it was transformation, a self-imposed erasure of everything he used to be. By early 2009, it had been nearly 2 years since Lindsay's disappearance, and still no trace of Tatsuya Ichihashi. Over 4,000 tips had come in. Police had followed leads from Okinawa to Hokkaido, but every one of them ended in nothing. Sometimes someone thought they saw him, other times it was just paranoia. In one case, a man was nearly arrested in Kyoto simply for looking similar. The investigation dragged on, and with every month that passed, the public began to lose faith. Criticism of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police mounted. Why wasn't he caught when they had him at the door? How had a barefoot man slipped through a net of 9 officers? The public had questions, and Lindsay's family had only one. Where is he now? In March 2009, Lindsay's parents, Bill and Julia Hawker, returned to Japan. This was their second visit, and this time they didn't come quietly. They held a press conference in Tokyo, stood before cameras, held up her photo, and begged directly to the man who had taken her daughter's life. Julia spoke softly but firmly. Please, if you're out there, if you have a soul left in you, turn yourself in. Let our daughter rest. Bill was more direct. "We will never stop looking. You may be hiding, but we are not going away." Their words hit headlines across Japan. The coverage reignited interest in the case, and for the first time in months, something shifted. The public cared again, and the pressure began to build. By late 2009, 2.5 years had passed. The trail had gone cold until one morning in November when a phone rang in Osaka. A ferry company employee had been watching the news. They'd seen the wanted poster, and something clicked. A man had just boarded the Osaka-Okinawa ferry. He looked different, gaunt, silent, wearing a hat and mask, but there was something in his eyes, the shape of his chin, the way he kept to the shadows. They called police, and this time, police acted fast. Officers met the ferry at port before departure, waited near the ramp, and as the man stepped off the boat, they moved in. When they asked his name, he hesitated. When they asked again, he said, "Tatsuya Ichihashi." On November 10th, 2009, after 2 years and 7 months on the run, Tatsuya Ichihashi was in custody. He didn't resist, didn't ask for a lawyer, didn't speak for days. Police held a press conference just hours later, and when the announcement came, the world paused. Lindsay's family issued a statement. "We're relieved, but it doesn't bring our daughter back." That night, media vans surrounded the Tokyo Detention Center. Footage played on every news channel. His mugshot, his new face, his silence. What followed next would be a long legal process. But for now, for the first time since March 2007, the question wasn't, "Where is he?" It was, "Why did he do it?" In the days following his arrest, Ichihashi said almost nothing. He refused food, sat in silence, avoided eye contact. Police held him under a series of pre-trial detentions. They had 23 days to question him, and they used every minute. Eventually, Ichihashi spoke, and what he said shocked investigators. He claimed he never planned to hurt anyone, that the meeting with Lindsay had been real, that she came to teach him English. He said there was an argument. He claimed she tried to leave. He panicked. He didn't want her to go. Things got physical. His version of events was detailed, but self-serving. He took responsibility for the outcome, but stopped short of explaining the full truth. Police noted how calmly he spoke, not emotionless, but deliberate, as if rehearsed. On December 23, 2009, more than 8 months after the case had stalled, Tatsuya Ichihashi was officially indicted. He was charged with multiple offenses, the most serious, homicide, unlawful confinement, and interference with a body. News of the indictment echoed across Japan and the UK. Some were angry he wasn't being charged with more. Others were just relieved he'd face justice at all. Meanwhile, Lindsay's family prepared for a long, painful trial. They knew it would mean hearing details they'd spent years trying to forget, but they also knew it was the only way forward. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered, cameras rolled, but inside the walls of detention, Ichihashi barely moved. He read books, wrote in notebooks, and waited for the day his version of the story would be tested in court. On July 4th, 2011, over 4 years after Lindsay's death, Tatsuya Ichihashi stood trial in Tokyo. He appeared calm, wearing a dark suit, expression unreadable. He pled guilty to charges of unlawful confinement and causing bodily harm resulting in death, but he denied premeditation. The courtroom was packed. Rows of reporters, dozens of supporters wearing yellow ribbons for Lindsay. Her parents sat quietly near the front. They had flown from England to be present, start to finish. Over the course of the trial, prosecutors laid out Ichihashi's movements, his strange behavior, the bathtub, the escape. Ichihashi admitted he tried to hide what happened, but insisted he hadn't meant to take her life. The court and the public struggled to believe him. On July 21st, 2011, the court reached its decision. Tatsuya Ichihashi was found guilty of all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison. He bowed, offered no apology, and was escorted away without protest. Outside, Lindsay's family addressed the press. They didn't celebrate. There was no victory. Her father simply said, "Today is not justice, but it is something, and we will take that. Lindsay Hawker's story had shocked Japan, but what lingered longer was her spirit, who she was before any of this. She had gone abroad to teach, to explore, to inspire others, and even in her absence, she continued to do that. In her name, thousands have called for stronger protections for foreign teachers, for women, for the vulnerable. And today, Lindsay is remembered not for what was taken from her, but for what she gave so freely: trust, kindness, and light. In July 2011, when Tatsuya Ichihashi received a life sentence, it was not the end. It was the beginning of a long reckoning, both for Lindsay's family and for a system that had failed her. Her father, Bill Hawker, spoke quietly outside the courtroom. "We don't understand how this happened, but what matters now is we remember who she was. That is our purpose." From that point forward, Lindsay's life story became the center of a public conversation about kindness, safety, and the responsibilities of teachers abroad. No longer just a case file, it became a cause. Back in Coventry, Lindsay's family launched initiatives in her memory. They created a scholarship fund for British students teaching abroad. They worked with the Foreign, Commonwealth, and Development Office to improve safety guidelines. They formed support networks for young teachers so no one would feel isolated or unheard. Their grief hardened into determination. They wanted change, and they began building it. In Japan, Nova closed its doors just months later, one of many ripple effects. The case prompted public debate about missing persons protocols, especially when expats are involved. Parliamentary committees reviewed police procedures. The Foreign Office issued safety advisories. Nonprofits emerged, focusing on personal safety training for young professionals, especially in unfamiliar countries. Lindsay's story became an unwelcome lesson, but a necessary one. In 2013, Bill and Julia gave their first in-depth interview since the trial. They spoke of the pain, but also of the pride in their daughter, her love of cultures, her kindness, her warmth. Bill said with tears, she was fearless, maybe too brave, she trusted too quickly, but that was who she was. They said they see Lindsay in the students she taught worldwide, in the volunteers who continue her work, in every teacher who now reads her guidance. Over the following years, discussion turned to ethics. Was it right to broadcast Lindsay's story so widely? Were true crime podcasts and documentaries respectful or exploitative? Some platforms profited from sensational angles. Others focused on honoring her life and uplifting cautionary lessons. Her case became a touchstone for responsible storytelling, asking, do we inform without exploiting? Do we learn without sensationalizing? Today, Lindsay Hawker is more than a tragic case. Her legacy lives on in teachers who now train for safety abroad, in families who demand better protections, in conversations that balance kindness and caution. Her story reminds us that even in darkness, light can endure, that trust, while precious, is fragile, that true safety comes from awareness, community, and never forgetting. Lindsay was beloved, she was a teacher, and she was taken far too young, but her memory has become something stronger than fear. It's become purpose.